Chapter 25. Malith, King of the Unfree. What breed of hypocrite am I? Certainly the kind that at the very least recognizes he is one. With this understood, I do not mean to let myself off easy. I dare not. I long for the home I scorned. I wish for my comfortable bed in my mundane abode atop a familiar tree within a known forest amongst the usual faces and their unoriginal dialogues. I yearn for the ilk of my blood whom I've accused of malice when it could have very well been incompetence, even an innocent miscalculation. Or perhaps, requiring of further clemency, they themselves, leadership and all, have fallen prey to a long-standing and historically seated deception. How am I to know? Therefore, how am I to point my crooked finger and condemn? With blurred eyes and a fogged mind, I allowed for shameful words to escape these accusatory lips. And though these were the lips of my thoughts, speaking in no verbal sense, I still feel guilt as though I have reproved the king himself before all of his subjects and all of their children. How shameful am I? There can be no doubt that any race is without their faults and misdeeds. Nevertheless, to side against one's own kind and without seeking allegiances with another as though I can remain neutral and unblemished in that fraudulent impartiality and self-lauded perfection is laughable. I have quite the load of scruples that require my sorting and culling. Perhaps my qualm is that I wish to know it all, a feat unachievable, when the clarity of discernment is more than sufficient in living justly. One moment after the next, piece by piece, life is to be examined. To fly high enough in seeking to capture it all shall have one wastefully soaring for eternity, never to find suitable ground, always to seek perfection where there is none. How exhausting! Then I hope for the honing and tempering of this precious thing that is discernment. May my travels do just that. May they hone it well. The Diursa wetlands are ominous. They are muddied by a pervasive stench of guilt and without remorse from the ill-conceived dispositions of the guilty, for they would rather we felt it than they. How willfully they give it, thrusting it our way, insisting with anger that we take it. It is dark, and I cannot be certain of this, but I am led to believe that even the first signal has induced little alteration to this wetland's usual ambience. The strain of night creatures that presumably reside in this horrid region void of hope must be that of the worst of them. The cackles, hoots, and screeches amongst the brush as we pass along a trail that's only apparent quality is that of a forgotten path taunt us to stray from it. Come to us. Are you not curious of our nature? As though they know of my temperament, they challenge that very intrigue that I thought insatiable, but now has met its match and lost its appetite. Swamps are littered throughout these lands, some large, some small. All of them reek of death and deceit, the latter wheedling those to the prior. The only emitted lights come from the reflective, peering eyes amidst the gloomy trees that have watched us since we breached the Diursa's thicket from the outside. Unwelcome, yet baited. The humidity ceaselessly harasses us in an unhallowed collaboration with the night creatures. Alas, through these swamps is our best chance at cutting time to our highlighted destination.
Ignore them. The wretches know well when they are outclassed. They only look for an opportunity of weakness before striking, before feeding, and we shall not show it to them.
Saba explains. You have experience in dealing with night creatures? Here? They seem different. I respond to his certainty with my uncertainty.
They've been emboldened by the new conditions presented to them.
Of course. A newfound confidence has been instilled in them by none other than Tiamatu. The beaten trail we follow intersects at a rusted gate, unlocked and open by a mere slit. Behind it is a complex of blood-curdling design, perched upon the only clearing outside of a swamp that we've seen since entering the wetlands. Before it, an inscribed monolith names the monstrous edifice, Malith Penitentiary. Both Saba and I are perplexed. A prison? Here? Right. I'd assume that even the most opportune of escapees would not risk being preyed upon by the night creatures or losing their way amidst the low-sitting fog. Outside of these reasons, I can find no other for constructing a prison in this horrific place. The swampland is a hospitable habitation for dark beasts, as well as for any who would seek profession in such a setting. This is all the more persuasive now that Saw has deserted us. Shall we just go around it? I can manifest no rationale as to why we'd enter.
No.
Saba responds with a strange conviction overbearing him. Are you mad? What does it benefit us to cut through such a place? We have no cause in doing so. I plead with him. We do not have the time to explain to yet another authority the purpose of our passing. Something has jarred him from our quest.
I've been searching for this very prison for over a decade to no avail.
He caresses the monolith.
And here it is, foisted before me at last.
Why? What could you possibly desire from such an ignoble scene?
A word from my brother.
I drop any and all accusations, whims, and preconceptions of him. I truly do not know Saba. Not well enough. Perhaps not at all. He is a prisoner here, I dubiously ask him.
Worse. He is the warden.
He proceeds toward the terrifying structure. I presume he means worse for us, not his brother. Its many towered peaks pierce and carve the roaming skies as talons of the wicked. Its glass windows, stained blood red and behind grated black steel, situated in its design, just above the main arching doors, are painted bricks assembled in the patterns of Tamas sigils that read, "Chained be those who enter, flogged be those who dare to leave, hunted those who succeed, and departed those who do not." Our journey has further familiarized me with their written symbols. I follow Saba despite the dire warnings. As we approach, a Tamasu fashioned in a metallic armor complementing the milieu of the prison stands guard with his tall halberd.
Speak your intention and state your business here,
he says to us. Saba kicks my hamstring inwards and brings me to my knees.
This one is to be delivered for imprisonment under the direct orders of the Queen herself.
Quick thinking, though he ought to have informed me prior to approaching the doors and executing such a dicey tactic. The guard appears unconvinced.
There are no expected deliveries assigned for today, especially not for an Omanu. Turn around and leave.
The guard patters his fingers against the handle of his weapon.
Check again. There is no need, Illador. Send them up.
A resounding voice blares from within the prison, traveling outwards to greet us. Judging from Saba's reaction, he recognized it immediately. The guard stands down and makes way for our entry. Another guard in a similar suit meets us at the doorway and ushers us to follow. The interior of the penitentiary complements the exterior precisely. Though impressive and beautiful in its shaping, this place, by its hue alone, was designed to rob one of his spirit. As we make our way down the lengthy hallway to the center staircase, we peer into the cells of the confined. They've all gone mad. Some crouched in the corners of their rooms, others wandering aimlessly in circles, few bashing their skulls against the stone walls, all of them of Tamas origin. Each cell has a strange mirror inside. These prisoners, have they been stripped of their abilities? Holding cells such as these ought to be trivial to escape, for many of the prisoners are unrestrained by any shackles or weights. Why is it that they make no attempts to flee? I ask the guard, who in turn ignores me entirely.
They fear my brother,
Saba responds in his place. Is your brother truly so powerful that he can subdue an army of prisoners ought they conspire to rebel? This prison is massive and its quarters numerous, I query.
He has a peculiar ability that has made him very well suited for his position as warden.
This is the only piece of information he affords me. Concerning? For he's been such a sharing guide thus far. Perhaps he is more secretive with his personal and familial matters. We come across a holding cell larger than the others, and with its own distinctive guard at attention. Behind the barred steel, flickering in the faint light of the torch directly outside, an individual lies flat upon his stomach. He is nearly naked, were it not for his ragged and torn undergarments, which barely cover his buttocks. Securing him, a cauldron twice his size is chained unto his head, and sealed tight. The weight of it for such a scraggly fellow is surely excessive in keeping him pinned. The floor below the cauldron is concave as to cup it and allow the prisoner to, at the very least, lay flat with his body. There is a similar depression next to it as well. Judging from the handles, I would presume that a couple of guards come in here once or, perhaps if they are affable, twice a day to turn the poor prisoner from his back onto his belly, and the inverse when it is time. I would expect these measures, or at the very least accept them, for someone as mighty as, say, Eviar. But this Damasu? I cannot repress myself. I must inquire. Who is that? I question the guard who only looks at me in a manner that royalty would apply in the presence of a peasant who has spoken out of turn. Or who dared to speak at all for that matter.
Answer him. I am the warden's brother, and this Umanu is as good as my guest so long as I am on the premise.
Saba invokes his hereditary ties as a claim to authority. A rather chancing appeal, but it nevertheless yields the desired outcome. The standing sentry gulps the tension whole and proceeds to answer my question, lest he risk angering the warden for denying his brother. Our escorting guard does nothing to stop him.
This is Manya, the realizer. His cauldron is insurance against his frightful ingenuity. What more surety can my brother need outside of his own capabilities?
It is Saba that now poses the interrogation.
Manya is different. The warden cannot control his dreams. He is mad beyond cure. Branding him a lunatic would be an insult to lunatics. His sleeping world is chaotically unstable. His imagination is untamable.
So, the warden, Saba's brother, has the ability to manipulate one's dreams. Amusing, but it does not explain why none of the prisoners haven't escaped. Surely once they are outside his domain of reach, they may do as they please unabated. Subsequently, I will have to ask Saba personally, as he has already continued to his next scrutiny.
What is his ability and what are his crimes?
Saba presses the guard for further details.
With his eyes set on his surroundings, he can pull phenomena from his imagination into the real world. He need only see in front of him.
Before the guard can go on, we both interrupt him. "Say again?" I exclaim.
Do you take me for a fool?
Saba grouches.
I am telling the truth. Menya is mad, and from his madness he pours his insanity into being.
The guard trembles, but his words do not. What was his crime, then? I reiterate Saba's inquiry.
Where do I begin? The Uman hurricane that slaughtered 4,000 Tamas? The hybrid beasts, dubbed legendary, that outcompeted many of the natural apexes across Oma? The Kaiser meteor set for one of your villages not many years ago? The great fungal plague of the previous century? The restructuring of Oma's reality itself? All of it is his doing. And these are only the transgressions we know of. Were he not already locked up in here, he would be our prime suspect in the strange occurrences with Sa as of late.
The guard has grown jittery in his explanation. Saba spits into Menya's cage.
Had you not been so pathetically lost in your madness, you could have become the sole emperor of Oma with a playful ease. But you squander your godlike gift with the likes of such a sporadic and childish imagination.
He is harsh and truly myopic in his power-lust view of the world, but he speaks no lie. Menya could have bent reality to his will, and he certainly wouldn't have been incarcerated had he maintained his sanity, if he ever had it to begin with. As we ascend to the top floor and face the great charcoal and meticulously ornate double doors of the warden's agency, chiseled at the corners with the heads of facing Shanat, I sense a terrible presence behind them. Saba's eyes are suspended in an unmoving tenet.
Are you just going to stand there, or will you come in to greet and embrace your older brother?
The same voice from outside the prison taunts us to him.
"Come!"
he yells. We do as he instructs. The guard does not follow us in, but simply shuts the doors behind us. Once again, we are treated to an utter change of scenery insofar as quality, suavity, and hygiene are concerned. The blood-red furniture is sumptuous. The desk of the warden is carved extravagantly with the figures of Tomas legends acting as the legs that hold the principal piece upright. A pelt of some wild, striped, and vibrant beast, the likes of which I have never seen, is flung across the center of the floor. Fastidious oil paintings depicting great battles and warriors occupy each wall, one of which is of Eviar, and another of Relindur, who is at the center of a worshipping mass. Therein, the Salvadaya is perceived lower the sword of one raider as he points to himself in a way that says to me what it is that he tells them, and that is, I will take on your requital. Swing this no more. The largest and main canvas illustrates a silhouetted and featureless queen in what depicts the dawn of their race, as she raises what appears to be a lame infant Omanu to the stars. Fine linen curtains hang amongst the arched and stained windows behind his brother, who sits with his hands clasped comfortably. In front of him, upon the well-made desk, is a small bust made in his own image, a half-drunk glass pitcher of wine, his own regal goblet, and a mirror alike the ones in the prisoners' cells, only small enough to sit at the desk. One can figure from appearance alone that they are siblings. However, the manner in which they dress is discordant to one another. Saba's attire is that of a warrior. His brother's is that of an aristocrat. He dons a red coat with gold trim, an attractive black shirt underneath, and tightly woven beige breeches secured by a belt with a golden frame rendering the Tomas motif. The same motif seen plastered on their city walls, flags upon the chests of their military. 2 rising and crossing battle axes layered upon a sinking saw. It is said that their flag was designed to portray that their ascension will one day tower above even the star which gives our world life. If I ventured a guess, I'd say that Malith is likely 100 years the elder to Saba.
"Saba."
He sighs the name.
"Malith."
Saba firmly speaks his.
"It has been ages, little brother." "Would you have it any other way?"
Saba coldly replies.
I would. I'd have been delighted to never see you again."
Malith's tone drops to an intimidating bass.
"Right."
"You know, I almost gave up. I happened by this wretched prison by chance. The stars have at last aligned with my will." I never took Saba for an astrologist. I still do not. Malith's eyes wander over to my character, examining my every breath, blink, and subtlety before mentioning me.
"Would he be the reason for such a fortunate turn in your search?"
Malith's glare does not leave me for an uncomfortable while.
"He may have played a part in my finding you, yes."
Malith groans as he stands himself up, then paces behind his desk in deep thought.
"What would you have me do with you? I know why you've come, but I surely cannot satisfy your unfounded, unspoken, unbrotherly request of me. You see, I have a prison to run, and few things bring me comfort such as that which you seek to take from me."
He does not ease his pacing whilst he speaks to Saba, fidgeting in his deep pockets all the while.
"I'll leave here with it one way or another,"
Saba growls.
"Father's heirloom was bestowed upon me. I rightfully inherited it. How could one give away a gift intended for them specifically?"
He speaks crassly.
"He would have never done such a thing had he known I was still alive. You know it. I know it. Make it right,"
Saba demands. Malith's attitude flares into an eruption of wrath.
"I am Malith, king of the Unfree, warden of the dream world, and your older brother. Father was wrong to have ever held the sentiment that our family's greatest treasure be passed down to you. As our old Damasu would say, my take is my fill, and until I am filled I shall take."
He bangs his desk with a closed fist for each title he conjures, and then again by the conclusion of his quote.
You were none of those things, save the latter at the time, and you do not frighten me, for I am unmarked by your cowardly ability. Your hook is without my flesh.
Saba is unmoved. I find myself in the midst of a family feud, struggling to piece together the idioms and jargon of their exchange. Malith chuckles and recollects himself.
Check again.
The warden smirks diabolically from ear to ornamented ear. Saba lifts his left palm to his face and stares intently at and nearly through it. A brandishing of some strange symbol that was not there before glows across it.
When?
The only word that breaches his lips after some moments of careful examination.
This penitentiary is a branding facility first and foremost. All who enter are marked.
I inspect my own palm, and surely he is right. So that's how he does it. All of the prisoners, from my short inspection of them, carried the same symbol upon their palms, but it did not strike me as a constructive article to pay any heed to. I simply thought of it as marking to indicate that they are prisoners. So this maniac now has access to my dreams and nightmares? My agitation ruptures through the composure I had until now attempted to keep. They both ignore me. The hostility between the two is visceral, and my interference means nothing.
You know I find no issue in killing you here, despite the endless nightmares that'll follow me thereafter.
Saba means it, but he cannot speak for the both of us. I have no quarrel here. His loyalty to me is yet to be determined. Thus he ought not feel that he has so securely gripped mine. What is more to consider, as a fascination of genetic mechanisms more than anything else, is that Malith's curse remains and is set into motion as a sort of perpetual nightmare were he to be murdered. It is a powerful assurance of his safety from his victims, and it is one that I had no notion that Tomas' prowess could so intricately develop into. I have heard rumors of such contingent workings of Omani with superlative control over their but for some of our distant cousins to have similar skill, truly, I tread upon a striking discovery.
I would haunt every sleeping second of your life, and it would permeate into your waking conscience undoubtedly. Certainly, the heirloom is not worth all of that.
His boorish and condescending way of speaking to his younger brother sheds a further revealing light upon their animosity for one another.
The heirloom itself does not merit this extent of suffering, no. In this you speak truth. However, my inviolable right to it is that which is worth such misery.
Saba simply desires what was meant to be his for the sake of principle. He feels as though he were disrespected. He must have been near and dear with his father. Again Malith slams his desk, this time breaking it in half. However, it yet stands.
He loved me too!
He unexpectedly bawls.
You know well that you do not believe that.
Malith sulks and sinks back into his chair, retreating behind his clasped hands.
Ah! Take it! Just take it already!
He suddenly abandons his defensiveness and resigns. The elder sibling is an emotional wreck. How can one who is so erratic operate a penitentiary of scale such as this?
I will not settle for a fake, and it will not fool me, brother.
Saba accuses him.
It is no fake. This damn thing plagues me anyhow. Father has cursed me.
He deplorably clamors.
Because you, too, know in your despicable heart that you do not deserve it. Take it, I said.
He unveils a wrapped dagger from a handkerchief from within his desk drawer. There seems to be nothing special about it. It is simply an iron dagger with no remarkable qualities. It's nicked and scratched from hilt to tip. It must solely be of sentimental value to them. Saba obliges. He inspects it and comes to the conclusion that it is the original, then replaces his own dagger with it, sliding it into his sheath.
Now be gone,
Malith commands us.
Not before you remove these markings.
Saba instructs him as he holds his palm out to his brother, who sways in hesitation.
Oh, but of course. It wasn't as though I were hoping you'd forget or anything.
His sarcasm is violent. He was, beyond question, hoping we'd forget. We both lend the teary-eyed warden our palms, and he swipes them with his own, dissipating his binding to us.
Now, go.
The irate warden hollers for us to exit and snaps repeatedly for his guard to escort us out. He is as a grown and overindulged child. As we put some distance between us and that dreadful prison, I nudge Saba for an explanation. That was too easy, don't you think?
My brother does not handle aggression well. You push him enough, and he folds under pressure. He'd rather never deal with conflict or a challenge so long as he lives, and that is why our father hadn't intended on passing down the dagger to him. When I was away on a prolonged quest of my own, Malith had falsely and cunningly informed him that I had passed away in an incident involving some wolves. At the time, father was gravely ill, thus he had no other choice but to gift it to who he had believed was his only surviving son. Father passed before my return.
I am sorry. It is all I can muster to say to him at this moment. However, another question arises after a brief silence. What makes that dagger so distinguished? What sort of value does it hold?
It is a normal dagger, but its history is not. My grandfather used it to avenge our lineage against a rival family long ago. That is all. It means more to me than it ever did or could to Malith, whose only plea in life was for an undeserved love and an unmerited esteem.
I see. I nod and refrain from prodding any further. After several hours, Saba initiates a new conversation.
Have you any siblings?
I do not, I reply in earnest. I wish I did. Perhaps the duty of the incarnate would have been split and shared had this been the case.
Have you both parents, or are you a one-born?
I am no one-born, no. I had both parents, but they are not with us today. My father died during an ambush whilst on an escort mission. Raiders took his life. My mother passed by way of poison from an envious suitor that she refused to entertain shortly after my father's parting from this realm. I tell him plainly, for even though the wrenching emotions I yet carry with me to this very day are present, always and forever, I have subdued them in a manner where I can speak of them without breaking down externally. Saba is so taken away by this revelation that he ceases his trek immediately upon the conclusion of the short history I have shared with him.
Your father was murdered by the Tamas, yet you wish to befriend our race wholly. Your mother was poisoned by her own kind, yet you have refrained from speaking ill of them for some time now, even in the wake of your dearest friend having proven himself disloyal to you. Your demeanor, especially upon initial impression, speaks to the beholder of a shielded innocence, one that said to me, I know nothing of the real world and I have yet to experience true hardship. This was clearly a misjudgment on my end. Why, then, do you so conversely behave as you do?
He poses this incredibly perplexing question to me, a question that I am not certain I can answer in sincerity. I do not know. I would rather my woes devour me from inside than be set free to rampage and ravish those around me. I am repressed, for I fear who I would become were I not to bury these things. I come to realize this truth for the first time as I tongue it into existence. Saba studies me, and from the morphing of his countenance from perplexity to pity, and from pity to an anticipated grief, I know not what to make of his judgment.